A lot of people are concerned about the amount of hair that you finish up with at the end of your braid process. Do not worry. Hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Amina. And today we are just gonna do a super just kickback protective style Q&A because as I've kind of experimented over the last couple of years with protective styles, I have learned a lot, some do's and don'ts, so I wanted to share those with you today. I did a little Q&A on Instagram recently for just any kind of protective style Q&As, so without further ado, we are gonna get into it. So for our first question is going to cover the first step of braids, and that is how do you prep your hair for getting braids. So I recommend doing a deep cleanse for your hair. So a nice shampoo that's going to basically just set a very clean foundation for your braids. This is not only going to help your stylist, but also make sure that you don't have any hidden buildup that's underneath the braids for a true protective style. So that means that your hair is able to breathe and flourish. I recommend if you have any gentle sulfate cleansers or just a detoxifying sulfate-free cleanser, either option is just going to help make sure that you're drawing everything out before getting into your protective style. After washing your hair, I recommend using some kind of silicone-free leave-in conditioner, and you can also use a braid butter or oil. I have really been liking moisturizing my hair with the Lush Fro Butter from Afro Sheen. It's just nice and thick. And does a really good job at moisturizing my hair without me having to add in a lot of layers of products because I still don't want there to be much buildup, but I find that this just does a really good job at moisturizing my hair once I have blown it out so that it's easy for the stylist to braid your hair more easily. Another pro tip that I highly recommend that I started to do if you do have a sensitive scalp is to also prep the actual braiding hair by using a mixture of water and apple cider vinegar. I'll be showing this in another video very soon, but this is just going to help pull out any chemicals that actually come with the hair to help preserve it with shipping and things like that. I understand that it's needed to a degree, but it's very irritating on the skin, not only your scalp, but also can be the back of your neck. So if you do experience irritation with that, I recommend doing that, just stripping the hair before you go into braiding it, and you can just dry it overnight. It won't tangle, you leave it as is, and that's it, but we'll go into that in another video, just pro tip. A very frequently asked question is how do you wash your hair and how often do you wash your hair, if at all? So everybody's hair is different, and I say that this answer is really dependent on your scalp and how long you do plan on keeping the braids in for. So if it's going to be a quick style, I would say sometimes you don't need to wash them during that time, but every 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, especially if you're starting to feel any kind of irritation, or especially if you're going to the beach or getting your hair wet in the pool, you definitely need to wash after that. So just keeping in mind that this style is meant to be protective for you. So if your scalp is asking to be taken care of and washed, cleansed, that's something that you can do. Overall, as far as do you need to wash your braids, it's really up to you. But if you do have anything that's going into your hair on a regular basis when you have them in, then I do recommend washing them at some point during your time with them. Recommendations for cleansing your hair and scalp with a protective style-in. I really like the Cantu apple cider vinegar root rinse. This uses tea tree oil, apple cider vinegar, and it's sulfate, silicone, paraben free, and free of mineral oils, which are all things that I look for when I have a protective style. The reason you want to stay away from silicone products is because your hair is already kind of underneath. And so in addition to that, if you have the barrier that silicone creates over the hair, there's not any additional moisture that can get in the entire time you have the protective style in. If this is truly meant to protect your hair, you want to make sure that moisture is able to get in so that you can take them out and your hair is going to be in good shape. If you can't use the root rinse or prefer a specific type of shampoo or cleansing conditioner for your hair, I highly recommend doing a DIY with an applicator bottle. And I put in about this much water, I would say 4 parts water to 1 part product. One product that I have used for years, I just re-upped on my Trader Joe's Tea Tree Tingle conditioner. This is a cleansing conditioner also, so I find that it does a really good job at cleansing lightly, but it doesn't have the suds, so it's a lot easier to work it through your scalp. But you want to have more water than product because that's going to help spread it around your scalp and down the length of your hair without it getting caught up, and it's really easy to rinse out that way. One tip for washing your hair is I recommend, if you can, in the shower, if you have the arm strength, or if you don't have time to do a long drying process, you can just hold up your hair like this and get to it in the shower for the entire length of your natural hair, and you don't have to worry about the ends. How long you keep in your protective style really depends on the type of style and the size of it. So for smaller braids, I would recommend, anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks I think is totally fine, because the smaller they are, the less frizz from your natural hair you'll typically see because it's braided in a little more finely, tightly. But the larger the size, the less length of time that you'll probably want to keep those in, because the bigger braids are going to start showing frizz a lot more quickly. Medium-sized braids, I would say you can keep them in for up to 4 weeks, like this style. And for the larger styles, I would say 2 to 3 weeks is probably more than enough, and then you'll start kind of seeing the frizz and looking a little scruffy, so you can just take those out. To preserve your natural style and stretch it as long as you can, it's definitely all about your nighttime maintenance. Making sure that you moisturize your hair before bed is really important, and this is how I like to do that. What you're gonna wanna have is a spray bottle, just a little water bottle, a silicone-free sheen spray of some kind, and I also recommend using a styling mousse of some kind as well, and that's going to help with any frizz and fraying overnight. So nighttime routine is pretty much going to look like setting your hair with a little bit of water to moisturize it. You can do this either every night if you want to, or you can wait every few days. Just depends how frizz prone your hair is, but I do recommend getting some moisture into it every 2 to 3 days. So I just mist my hair. Then I would say you can use one or the other. It really just depends on what your hair has going on. If you need a strong hold to just kind of keep the hair at bay, you can use the mousse. The mousse, I say, is probably more helpful if you have goddess ends, because that's going to help smooth any frizziness that could potentially happen at the bottom for the first couple of days. But this is some good mousse, so I don't want to abuse it because we want to keep her for our natural styles. So this I use sparingly, but otherwise I will just add a little bit of sheen spray. And then after that, oh my gosh, it's oil everywhere. If you need to re-moisturize your scalp, I also recommend using an oil before bed. Just adding a little bit to your parting and a little bit to your hairline as well is helpful. And if you do have chronic scalp conditions like seborrheic dermatitis, eczema, or anything like that, I highly recommend staying away from coconut oils during the time that you have your scalp exposed to the world, because sometimes when your scalp is kind of exposed this way and there's a little bit of tension, sometimes that it may just be super sensitive, and coconut oil does feed the natural yeast that lives on the scalp, so cut her out if you can. I really like this Essential 17 Hair Growth Oil mix from Alakay Naturals. It is pricey, but it's one of the very few that I have found that do not have coconut oils, but they do have a lot of really great scalp and hair friendly oils in them. So yeah, you can find this at Target, other beauty retailers. Would recommend. So after that whole process, you can go ahead and put on a silk or satin scarf. I thrifted this scarf many moons ago, but because thrifting is not as safe these days, I will link some recommended scarf retailers in the comments description wherever you're viewing this video. So a long scarf is going to protect pretty much the length of your natural hair and very easy to sleep in. And then I just tie her up. And there we go. How long do you wait between protective styles? Great question, and I think that this depends on what your goals are for your hair. If you are in the process of trying to grow out your transitioning hair, or if you just want to take a break but you are planning on coming back to your natural hair and letting it live its best life. I recommend doing, I would say, a week between styles if you can swing it. I know some people are right back in the chair. After they take it out, wash it, they're back in. But if you're getting heavier protective styles that have a lot of tension, like box braids, then I would say if you can wait a week or longer, I would recommend that first, so you can wash your hair fully. You can do a deep conditioning treatment, let your hair kind of have a week to breathe, and then get back into that next style if you like to. I personally am doing protective styles probably like once or twice a quarter, but it's up to you. If you're just a protective style queen and you are taking great care of your hair, you have your rhythm down, do them as often as you want to. I would say that knotless braids are probably the safest protective style to get if you are getting singles that are hanging off your scalp. Knotless braids are amazing because they are just really low tension. They're super lightweight. Just would recommend for so many reasons. If you can swing it, I would recommend them, but otherwise with box braid, just make sure that you communicate with your stylist that you're careful around the edges and that you're pretty gentle with them as they're starting to loosen up around your root for the first week. Next question is, do I do my braids myself or have somebody else do them? I personally way prefer for somebody else to do them, but I have started to experiment a little bit. So although I did not do these myself, I have started to do kind of a mix of like crochet things by myself and just kind of experimenting here and there. There are so many great tutorials out there, and I'm trying to learn how to be an efficient DIY queen when it comes to protective styles, especially since we're in the house a lot more. But if I don't really have a lot of time, or if I don't have the arm strength or energy, it's so nice to be able to just have somebody else do it. Tips for protective styling for fine hair. The question said, my hair doesn't like to stay put in marley twists, etc. And that's a really good question because not everybody's hair is thick enough to, or textured quite enough to hold on to certain types of styles. For example, my hair can hold tight in most protective styles, I would say, but in twists, it's a lot harder. And I did find that when I got passion twists for the first time, there were some in the looser sections of my hair that did slide out. So you really just want to keep in mind what your hair texture is and what it needs to decide what style is going to be best for you. So I would say that marley twists, if you have really soft and fine hair, that twist styles are not going to be the best unless they're crocheted. I can't really speak as an expert to how crochet styles work when it comes to twists, so I will link some tutorials in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, just to kind of help you out with that, because I think that there are ways you can do it, but different technique for finer hair textures. How to keep your braids looking neat when they do start to frizz up. Aside from the maintenance side that I showed you on how to wear it at night, I would say that having a edge control is extremely important, and it's not just for your edges, and the mousse. So I'm just going to show you just touching up these edges a little bit. I made sure that they were not done for this video. Don't come for me. So I will just first add just a little bit of water to my edges and to the top of my head. And then I will take an edge control. I have really been liking the Edge Tamer from Gold Series. It's probably one of the sturdiest ones and easiest to find ones that I have at the moment. So then I will just take a little bit and just start touching up those areas and using an Edge Tamer to just do a little swoop action. And that is just immediately, once the edges are touched up, and even like if you have a little sideburn, you can just clean those up and it just automatically starts to look way cleaner. So I'm gonna do that really fast and then show you how to do the top. Okay, so once you've hit the edge area, things start to look a little neater, and then at wherever your part is, you can just put a tiny bit on those little boxes. You don't need to do this anywhere, but in some of those exposed areas that will kind of get frizzier at the front, I find that this is really helpful. And it'll just clean it up a little bit if you want to stretch the style for a little bit longer. To finish up the de-frizzing cleanup process, I will go in with just a little bit of the mousse. And if you are a little bit frizzier on the top, which is usually where I will find it, I just like to just pull it down the length a little bit. You can throw on your scarf for a bit to lay it down if you want to, but otherwise I feel like this pretty much does the job. If the ends are frizzy, you can also hit those as well, and a little goes a long way. How do you part your hair for braids for a flat look? Fortunately, the braids do the flattening for you, so I try to have the most versatile part that I can, and that's either going to be a middle part with an optional side part. I think stylists are going to be able to make the best recommendations just with your personal preferences in mind, but if you're doing it yourself, I would say just being able to kind of have the option to like flip it over, mix it up, whatever you want to do. I personally love a little side part. So yeah, just give yourself some options. Next question is, which is a better, more protective style, faux locks or passion twist, and why? Now, I have a personal preference, but I will give you my most unbiased POV first. So it really depends on the look that you're going for and also how long you plan on having the style in for. Pros of passion twist first, I would say that if you really like that kind of boho, just passion twists are a vibe for sure. They are very just kind of like casual, flowy. They're very beautiful. They're very lightweight, which I absolutely love. And you can even use a lot of packs of hair, but just the way that it's twisted is just gonna be lightweight. However, cons, I would say they do, because their twists pull out a lot easier, especially if in the kind of front of the hair where there's not as much hair to actually hold on to, or if you have shorter hair in general, they do tend to slide out. So unless you're prepared to pop it back in yourself, which is not as easy as it might sound, not my favorite, and it's just not as polished of a look after about 2 weeks. So if you are trying to live your best life for like a whole month, she's not the style, sadly. Unless you do the crochet. Crochet is a great option and alternative, and you don't have to do the twisting yourself, or your stylist doesn't have to do the twisting. So that is also something to consider, because I've seen that recently and it's really cute. Faux locks, I can't say that I know of any cons aside from it maybe being a little bit heavier. They are just a really, really chic look. You can play around with colors. They're just beautiful. I think that the way that they're done, it's a more involved process. They are gonna stay in longer, and I think look pretty polished for a lot longer too. I personally haven't tried them yet, but based on what I've heard so far from other people, they're great. So I would recommend those if you're trying to have a longer term style. Question that I probably get asked the most is, which colors do I usually mix with my hair? I would say 95% of my styles, I use the base color M427. This is kind of like an ashy brown color because my hair is highlighted, but as the highlights have kind of started to grow out a little bit, I would say that this color matches my natural hair the best. It is just a nice light brown color that looks very, very natural, and I find that Restyling has the best mixed color of this hair, so I highly recommend this one. And then any highlight, or if you've seen me with a blonde color before, I'm using the M27 613. This is a nice ash blonde. I prefer it way, way more than just the straight up 613, because that color, I'm gonna be honest, it looks closer to ramen noodle than blonde. I've used it before, and against my skin color, I don't like it. If you're using like a mix, that can work well. It's a good substitute, but if you want something that's more of a natural blonde, I would say this one fits the bill. That was no shade to anybody who's had it. I'm just speaking from my personal preference against my skin. I was like, no ma'am. Last but not least, a little bonus is the takedown process for braids. I personally like to detangle as I go. I highly recommend it if you have a conditioner that you don't care a lot about, or if you have a leave-in conditioner that's inexpensive and you won't cry if you finish it off that day of takedown. I recommend detangling as you go, and so what I will do is I will usually cut like a few inches above where I know my natural hair is, just in case. And then I will usually take down 2 to 3 braids before I spray it with a little bit of water, and then I will use conditioner, leave-in conditioner, whatever it is, to detangle from end to root. And so what this is going to allow you to do is more easily detangle your hair instead of waiting till the very end and all of your hair kind of starts to mat together and it's an absolute nightmare. Just detangle it as you go because you'll save yourself headache and prevent a lot more breakage. A lot of people are concerned about the amount of hair that you finish up with at the end of your braid process. Do not worry, our hair sheds about 50 to 100 hairs per day. So if you imagine that you are not seeing any of your hair coming out in the shower or in your hairbrush every day, where do you think it's going? So when you take your hair down, do not worry. If you've had it in for a month, you can do the math. 3,000 hairs that you shed, that's a lot. It's gonna look like a lot, pretty overwhelming to see, but it's totally fine and normal. You are not balding. Just make sure that you're very careful during your takedown process and you have nothing to worry about. All right, so that's the end of the Q&A. I hope that it was helpful, but if you have any other questions at all, definitely let me know in the comments. I know that it was long, but you know we like to be detailed, so if you have any other specifics, we can get into it down there. And yeah, I will talk to you guys very soon. And now time to take these guys out.